Hello, everyone. My name's Cal. I'm a former member of CSG. I was a treasurer, and now I'm a legacy member.
Hello, I'm Swati, and I'm a new CSG officer.
I'm Crash. I'm the president. I don't really know why I'm here, so. Cool. I'll let you guys go ahead and kick it off.
All right. So if you can, be sure to sign in. We need those sign-ins for more pizza in the future and other things. So please sign in. I'll give you all a moment to do that. All right, moving on, we've got some announcements. So tomorrow there's going to be a Paycom technology panel. So I'm told some UTD alumni will be there, and they'll be talking about some different ways that they work for Paycom. It'll be October 1st, tomorrow, 6 p.m. through Zoom. More details will be posted in the Discord later, and I'm told there will be prizes.
So let's get started with privacy policies. If the first image that came to your mind was one of those boxes that say terms and conditions at the top, and for this you just scroll down and click I agree, then you're absolutely correct. Your thoughts were definitely headed in the right direction. So today we'll be talking about these policies that are put in place to protect your privacy. Let's be honest now, close to none of us really read the privacy policies page and give our consent right away. Although we are presented with a I do not agree option, if we decide to not agree, we can't complete the registration process or use the application that we need. Even though we click the I agree, that doesn't mean that we have been provided with privacy. Essentially, we're just being set up in this trap of giving illusory consent because we don't have a choice. So let's first start with what privacy actually means. Privacy can be defined as the state or condition of being free from being observed or disturbed by other people. A privacy policy is a statement or a legal document that discloses ways in which a party gathers, uses, discloses, and manages a customer's or client's data. In the context of businesses, especially online businesses, it is often a statement that declares a policy on how they collect, store, and release your personal information. Here, the personal information doesn't just pertain to your name, age, date of birth, but it also encompasses a wide variety of things such as financial records, credit card information, your medical history, your travel history, etc. They're required to make you aware of what specific information is collected, and they have to make you aware that they're keeping it confidential, and they have to also make you aware that who the third-party shareholders are and who they're selling it to, which firms they're selling it to, and other enterprises. So now let's talk about a few laws that are enforced in order to protect your online privacy. First up is the CCPA, which stands for California Consumer Privacy Act. The intentions of the act are to provide California residents with the right to know what personal data is being collected about them, know whether their personal data is sold or disclosed, and to whom it's being sold or disclosed. They have the right to deny the sale of their personal data. They have the right to access their personal data. They could also request a business to delete any personal information about them, and they have the right to exercise their privacy rights. So California has privacy requirements for any business that collects personally identifiable information from California residents. But this doesn't just apply to businesses in California. This applies to any business that collects information from California residents. So even if you're outside of California, if California residents visit your website, social media page, or make a comment on your blog, then that automatically makes you subject to privacy requirements that California enforces. Similarly, the European Union has this the GDPR, which stands for General Data Protection Regulation. This governs the privacy of personal information of the citizens of the European Union. So again, just like California, even if you're not located anywhere near the European Union, if you collect or if information about you is collected from the people residing in the European Union, then that would make you subject to privacy requirements of the GDPR. The intentions of the GDPR are the following 6. The first one is personal data can be collected and processed only upon individuals' consent. The second one is to fulfill contractual obligations with an individual. The third one is to comply with companies or third parties' legal obligations. The fourth one is to protect personal and vital interests of an individual. The fifth one is to perform a task in the public interest or official authority. This last one states that for the legitimate interests of a data controller or a third party, unless these interests are overridden by interests of the data subject based on his or her rights, the GDPR can be exercised. So what this last one means is that a company or a third party can make your data anonymous, which means that they detach information from you, from your name, and this way information about you has no value to it because it isn't attached to you anymore. They do this to multiple people and aggregate the results and use it for research purposes to provide you with better customer service. So there are some differences between the CCPA and the GDPR, and this includes scope and territorial reach of each, how they define protected information, the levels of specificity in each of these laws, and they also have an opt-out right for sales of personal information. The CCPA differs in definition of personal information from the GDPR in the sense that the CCPA only considers data that was provided by a consumer and excludes personal data that was purchased by or acquired through third parties. The GDPR does not make that distinction and covers all personal data regardless of source. If we look at sensitive personal information, this does not apply if the information was made public by you or by anyone else. So from this, we can infer that the GDPR has a much broader range of definition than the CCPA, which tends to be more specific and more defined. So next, we're going to talk about loopholes in privacy policies. Consumers need to behave in a really paranoid way where you assume that any company that can is probably going to collect information about you. It all starts with a corporate privacy policy you might not even read and just click accept when you download an app or sign up for a site. It takes a lawyer at least a few hours to digest a privacy policy. These policies are written by lawyers for lawyers to protect the company. The company that we're talking about here is a company that thrives on your private information. You can almost always and never be sure about what is being collected in these policies. There are some products whose privacy policies raise some red flags, and we'll be talking about them. So one such example is the Philips Sonicare Bluetooth toothbrush. It connects to an app to reveal brushing habits. In the policy, it states that what we collect may include your first name, username, profile picture, email address, gender, birthday, age, country, language, and password. The next line is important. And Philips may also work with third parties who process your personal data for their own purposes. Now they leave it up to you to find those other privacy policies that relate to these third parties and figure out what they are doing with your data. So in response to investigating this statement from the privacy policy, Philips stated that they take data protection seriously and they aim for transparency, and that's why it was described in detail in the privacy policy by Philips. And the one important point to note here is that they say Philips only shares their data with these independent third parties at the user's request. Now we'll look at another example. Starbucks collects loads of information. It's nothing to do with serving coffee. The policy states that the web pages you view, including the date and time and the subjects of the ads you scroll over, will be tracked. Starbucks then allows third parties to access that information. The policy states that we have added certain features to our websites and mobile applications that allow social networks such as Facebook and Twitter to track the activities of their members. So, upon investigation of this statement in the privacy policy, Starbucks responded saying that the privacy of our customers is incredibly important to us, and we regularly evaluate all policies to make sure we're protecting their best interests. The Starbucks also stated similarly, saying that they strive for transparency and they do not sell information to advertising companies. And they also said that their policy provides customers options for choosing to share information with them. So here we can see that both Philips and Starbucks, they turned their privacy policies against customers who agreed to their privacy policies, saying that we were the ones who chose to share our personal information when we really didn't have a choice and our personal information was just misused. The next example we're looking at is Sleep Number's mattress. Last November, it was found to have permission to record audio while you were sleeping. The policy once said, "We also may collect personal information, which may include audio in your room, to detect snoring and similar sleep conditions." The shocking thing was how it was buried in a privacy policy and not told right up front. It wasn't revealed to the customers. Sleep Number's statement in response to this was that they said that their products do not record audio, and this was an error in their privacy policy, and that they've corrected this. So this shows that it is important to read the privacy policies because it does tell you what could be done with your data. So far we've talked about privacy policies in the context of businesses. Now let's look at the most common online space in which privacy is sought the most, social media. Privacy policies on social media applications such as Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, etc., there are many. They're rarely straightforward. Although these applications have a set privacy policy in place, they introduce a subset called privacy settings, in which they make you think you have full authority to govern your privacy. The majority of social media platforms have default settings that you may not be comfortable with. These default settings, also known as opt-out settings, rely on your passive consent to access your personal information. Instead of asking you to check a box that says you consent to having your information shared, opt-out settings require you to seek out and change a default setting. So some common opt-out privacy settings include agreeing to allow your profile to show up in public searches, alerts that display when you're online, having your cookies saved, and tracking your interests. So for example, Facebook has been under major scrutiny in terms of protecting privacy policies and advertising. According to a 2018 report from the Pew Research Center, 74% of adult Facebook users in the United States said that they didn't know Facebook kept a list of their personal interests, and over half of the respondents said they weren't comfortable with the company having such sensitive details about them on record. The privacy settings on most social media platforms don't offer full protection. On Facebook, for example, even if you limit who sees your posts, your personal information can still get to third parties through friends who like and comment on your posts. Plus, most social media companies have a massive page of privacy settings to scroll through that most of it is very confusing. Your friends can compromise your social media privacy. As social media use becomes more widespread, individual social media privacy diminishes. According to a 2018 survey from the Pew Research Center, 69% of American adults use at least one social media platform, which means that the majority of your social circle will use one or more of the same platforms that you do. Even if you have tightened your privacy controls, you're still not in control of your friends' privacy settings. Social media companies, advertisers, and third parties can still access your personal information through your friends' profiles and posts. Your friends might let Facebook access their contacts list, which can then expose your phone number and your email address to trackers. Likes, comments, and general exchange of information between you and your friends gets encoded on each other's profiles as well. As a result, advertisers can use your friend group to learn more about you. In fact, researchers found that you can profile someone with 95% accuracy using the information from just 8 or 9 of your friends' social media accounts. And this was from a study published in the Nature Human Behavior. These companies can use your information, as well as information of your friends, to analyze your online behavior and create a digital persona for you and send you targeted ads and tailor your news feeds. The next point is syncing apps. Syncing apps spreads your personal information across the web. For example, there are sites for products such as Fitbit that let you log in using your Gmail or Facebook account. Using your social media account to sign into other online accounts may make internet logins easier, but it also limits your privacy. When you sync two apps or accounts, you give both apps permission to access the data on the corresponding platform. If you sign into, for example, Fitbit's site using your Facebook profile, not only does Facebook get access to your account information on the Fitbit site, but the Fitbit site also has access to your Facebook profile. This information swap spreads your personal details far beyond the two apps you're using. That's because most social media and advertising companies reserve the right to sell or share your information with third parties. Personal information about you is scooped, sold, and made into a business data transaction. Unnecessary information about you is collected, which is not even relevant. For example, Fitbit now has access to your Facebook profile and can collect information such as a list of your favorite restaurants from your profile. So, some potential solutions are protecting your social media privacy is an ongoing endeavor, and it's important to not only review and update your privacy settings on each platform, but to double-check your synced apps, browser extensions, and make sure to read the privacy policies carefully. These privacy policies are made by lawyers for lawyers, like I stated before. Therefore, these privacy policy writers should be held accountable for any misuse of our personal information and not turn it against us, saying that we chose to share the information. And now I'll hand it over to Cal, and she'll be talking about surveillance capitalism.
All right, so I'm going to be discussing the landscape of surveillance capitalism. So you might be wondering, what is surveillance capitalism if you're not familiar with it? So by a definition from Shoshana Zuboff, who coined the term popularly, it would be defined as the unilateral claiming of private human experience as free raw material for translation into behavioral data. Swati, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so there's the definition that Shoshana made right there. And she also describes key features. So essentially, this is a drive toward more and more data extraction and analysis. So what that means is it's going to keep happening as long as this landscape is in existence. And another key feature is that it's going to be the development of new contractual forms using computer monitoring and automation. And then another one is going to be the desire to personalize and customize the services offered to users of digital platforms. So they want to make a tailor-made bubble for you, essentially. And that's what the internet is developing more and more towards. Another key feature is the use of technological infrastructure to carry out continual experiments on its users and consumers. So as more technology develops, more ways to extract this data is utilized. All right, and then so essentially this is a mass surveillance industry. A lot of people think it's the inevitable outgrowth of digital tech, and that it's used to develop the services that cater to you and make products that you're more likely to use. A quote by Bruce Schneier is going to be, "Surveillance is the business model of the internet." And I think that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. I just think that it's developed in this environment because the way that the economy demands for more investment capital, it makes it more value to investors for a corporation to have this data that they can profit off of. So we're going to talk about click-through rate, which essentially is you clicking on that buy button and taking that data and predicting who will click on that buy button, when they will click on that buy button. And then we'll talk about footfall data, which is you maybe walking around and your likelihood to go into a shop and purchase something. So these are targeted towards you, and not everything is going to be necessarily towards the individual user. This is certainly a massive scale, and they use it to collect data on populations and sell this data for behavioral future markets. And that way they can develop these lure models to draw in more customers. So essentially what we've got going on is economies of action. These economies are intended to be saturated with convenience so that you will not notice anything out of the ordinary, and you'll be too busy being entertained to even care that these supply chains are developing from your data. All right, so let's go into a little bit of the history. As I said before, Shoshana Zuboff is a Harvard professor. She's the author of The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, which came out last year, and it is a good look at what exactly might be going on behind the scenes. So this all developed from residual data, or what they used to call data exhaust. So Google, when they came about in like, their late 90s, early noughts, whenever they came about, because I didn't look that up, they had this residual data. And at first they didn't know what to do with it. But then they found out that it was a behavioral surplus. And they used it to develop an improved spell checker or their did you mean function. And then later on, they developed targeted ads. Thank you. Google was founded in 1998. So yeah, from there, let's see. So the investment opportunity of this residual data became apparent to Google, and one of the executives brought that philosophy over to Facebook. And Facebook was found to be experimenting with subliminal cues. They actually manipulated words and language to change real-world behavior. And they exercised these methods while bypassing user awareness. So not only is the predictive value of the data that is accumulated by this residual data of value, but also the applications for manipulation is of value. All right, so one of the examples of a possible, or it's not necessarily in doubt, but a lot of this is behind the scenes, so it's not in the history books or anything. But Pokemon Go is a great example for the opportunity to harvest the data. Pokemon Go was actually incubated by Google. It was published under Niantic as someone that no one had heard of before. And from Pokemon Go, as you can see from the photo, they used lure modules to set up gym stops, and people would buy drinks from like Starbucks at a gym stop. And a lot of businesses profited off of this footfall data. And so this data was being sold from third party to third party to third party. And an important thing to note is that after this data is out of the original corporation, they no longer have responsibility for it. So they say whatever the third party does is not their responsibility. And a major philosophy with surveillance capitalism seems to be to ask for forgiveness, not permission. And when they are pointed at and said, you've been doing that, they feign ignorance. So they'll send those data to third parties, and those third parties will send them on to the next third party. So this is a new supply chain, a new marketplace that is kind of unprecedented. So another example is going to be Cambridge Analytica. So if you haven't heard of Cambridge Analytica, that was a scandal of a third party spinoff from Facebook. They used data from more than 18 million Americans to analyze ways of manipulating voters. And so I can't help but think of the implications, which is the next slide, of this kind of data harvesting. So a lot of people will say that you have your data ownership, your accessibility, portability to that data, and that it belongs to you and you deserve to own it. But the problem with that is that we don't necessarily give all the data that is being collected from us willingly to these corporations. Like if you go onto Google and go to their webpage that has all the history that you have given them, you can see what you've done, but you can't see the data that they've collected from that data, or the data that isn't obvious. So it's really hard to regulate through GDPR or antitrust laws this form of collecting of the data exhaust. So this is a collective problem, and it needs collective action. Unfortunately, you can hide from these corporations all you want, but you are just one person to them. Overall, they're not going to really care if your data is not accessible to them. And in some ways, they do get data about you anyway. If you've ever heard of Facebook's phantom profiles, where they collect data on people that have never made a Facebook account, then you can see that this is a problem that goes beyond your consent. So my fear is a future like in Minority Report, which, if you're not familiar with, Minority Report is a book by Philip K. Dick. And it became a movie starring Tom Cruise. So the basic plot of this film is that there's precogs that predict criminal behavior, and they'll arrest these individuals that are going to commit crimes before they commit the crimes. So this might actually be developing in real life, notably maybe in places like China. And there was a sheriff department in America where they do have algorithms that are predicting criminal behavior. It's not exactly accurate, but it's out there. So the future is a little scary, and we need to do something about it. All right. Any questions? Just type away in chat, and we'll read it out. We'll wait a little bit longer, but if no one has any questions, we'll head out for the night. Feel free to ping us in Discord, and we'll answer any questions later if they arise. All right, I'm not seeing anything come up. So y'all have a great night.
Yeah, have a nice day, guys.